Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast Answer Man. This is Cliff Ravenscraft coming to you with a very special episode that I've been looking forward to doing for a very long time. This episode is devoted to a podcasting technology service, website, web host, a podcasting host anyway, called TalkShoe. Have you heard about TalkShoe? If you've listened to the Generally Speaking podcast network of shows that I produce, you've probably heard all kinds of talk about TalkShoe. In fact, I am a huge fan of everything that TalkShoe does, just about. And I wanted to share with you maybe some of the reasons why that is. And so without any further ado, I'm going to get right into our discussion today. First off, what is TalkShoe? You know, if I were asked to give my own personal description of what TalkShoe is, I'd want to start off with answering that by what is TalkShoe to the person who wants to start their own podcast, but they don't quite know where to start. I mean, for the average non-tech savvy individual, TalkShoe is the cutting-edge podcasting service that gives you the ability to start a podcast of your own without having to learn anything about RSS feeds. You don't even have to know what a file enclosure is. I mean, I firmly believe that somebody as young as 8 years old or someone as old as 98 years old could literally start a podcast on TalkShoe.com in less than 1 hour. I mean, all you really need is a computer and a telephone, and you can start podcasting. Now, you might think I'm just crazy, Cliff. You know, that's just sounds too easy. And, well, you know, I wouldn't have believed it until I saw TalkShoe and how it works myself. And actually, some people that I've consulted and encouraged to go ahead and try out TalkShoe, to give it a shot. You know, if it doesn't work out, you're not going to be out anything, because I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Anyway, TalkShoe is a service that combines a conference calling feature that is connected to a web-based software client that you can download and access from their site, that gives an individual the ability to use simple buttons that basically you hit to start and stop recording the conversation that is taking place in the conference call. I mean, simply, you dial in, you have a couple friends dial in, a couple hundred friends dial in, and you hit the start button. It records the conversation. You hit the stop button. It's all done. That is all you have to do. Now, obviously, with conference calling, the concept there is that you have multiple people logged into the conference call, and they're either participating in either talking or listening to the conversation. The person who is responsible for starting that particular call has the ability to mute or unmute anybody in the conference call whenever that person chooses to do so, using the mute button found inside this little web-based client that I told you about. You know, the callers also have the option to download and log into this web-based client during the show, although downloading anything is not even required to actually take part in one of these conference calls, or they prefer to call them talkcasts. Anyway, there are two main advantages to having a caller sign into the web-based client. First of all, it gives them the ability to hit a button. Excuse me, sorry about this. It gives the caller the ability to, once they sign in, there's a button that they can push called Request to Talk. Now, this is where a person can say, hey, I'm really interested in saying something about the topic that's being discussed here. They hit this Request to Talk button, and the person who is basically in charge of moderating this call or this talkcast sees the request inside their web client, and they say, okay, hey, let's bring this person in because they have something they want to say. Now, this is just awesome. It is a great way to get people to participate in the conversation. Now, I obviously have some kind of frog in my throat here, and rather than clear my throat while you're listening to this, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and let's see, I have a little loop here I'm going to play. Hold on 1 second while I clear my throat. I'm back, and I bring that down here. Okay, sorry about that. I typically try to get things all settled before I get started. I've just been so excited about doing this particular podcast that I just wanted to jump right in. So, oh crap, did I do that again? Hold on. Anyway, where was I? So I was talking about the fact that one of the advantages, the first advantage to having a caller actually sign in to the web-based client is the fact that they can actually request a talk. Now, people who are not signed in, the person running the talkcast or the podcast that's being recorded in this conference call, they have the ability to still unmute and mute the individuals that are just called in and not signed in on the web client. But having your caller actually be inside this web client is a nice feature because, like I said, they can actually say, hey, I want to talk here. Let's see here. The second advantage of having the caller signing into the web-based client is the fact that the client also has a robust chatting feature where all those who are signed in can be chatting about the topic discussed in the show, even if they're not dialed in on the phone. Now, the nice thing about TalkShoe is that to simply listen in on a live show that is being recorded, you don't have to dial in to the telephone. Maybe you don't have unlimited long distance on the weekends and at nights, or you have no other access to a telephone with a reasonable cost. So perhaps the caller doesn't want to dial in. Well, the web client, the software, has streaming audio that sends the full content of the conversation via streaming audio to your speakers on your computer. And if you're logged in, you can chat. You can actually send messages to the person who is running the podcast or the talkcast, and they can actually read your chat messages, and you can contribute to the show that way. And they don't even have to call in. So that's another feature there. While there is actually the ability for people to actually listen to your show streamed without even dialing in and without even signing into the chat client. I don't really want to focus on that. There is the ability to do that, but the fact is that TalkShoe is built around this premise of live and interactive. And so, sure, that other features there, but I'm only going to focus right now on the conference calling and recording of online live conversations. I just want to focus on dialing in and getting into that web-based client because those are the two most awesome features out there. Now, will you do me a favor and will you imagine something with me? Imagine, if you will, that you were extremely passionate about video gaming. Okay, lots of people are passionate about video gaming. Let's narrow it down a little bit. Let's imagine that you were extremely passionate about one specific game. I don't know. Let's pick a PC game titled Sims 2. Okay, let's just say this were you. What do you think the likelihood of you finding a group of people in your own hometown who share your passion for the Sims 2 game? It's not very likely, right? So where do you turn to if you want to get to know other people who also love Sims 2? I mean, of course, for years people have known about online communities, user groups, forums where you can interact with people through text messaging and written posts about this game. But, what if you could find a community of people who not only want to talk about it in text, but would be willing to join a conference call or to get on the phone together and record the conversation? Let's just say if you set up your own talkcast devoted to Sims 2, and you share this with your friends who you've been communicating with online in these forums and say, hey, I'm doing a live show simply devoted to Sims 2. I'd love it if you would come and join me live. And we can talk about this, and it's going to be podcasted out to where other people can listen to anytime they want on their iPods or their computers or wherever they want to listen to it at. Well, those who were able to set aside the time that you had scheduled for your conference call, they could simply join in on the conversation live. And those who would have loved to participate but couldn't for whatever reason, well, they could simply download a recording of that conversation either from your website or they could have that conversation automatically delivered to them about Sims 2 to their computer through podcasting. Well, this is exactly what TalkShoe is all about for you, the new podcaster. Now, if you think my example is a little too far-fetched, I mean, like, who really is going to start a podcast about Sims 2? Well, I'd like to introduce you to a talkcast on TalkShoe titled The Sims 2 Challenges. Now, this is hosted by a lady named Rachel Zizi Lisi. Now, Rachel has been a longtime listener of many of the Generally Speaking podcast network shows that I produce. When I started setting up live recordings for our weekly Lost podcast here on TalkShoe, where my listeners could participate in our live shows while we were recording them, well, Rachel was one of the first people to join us. It didn't take long after we had finished recording for Rachel to kind of just let it slip that she had this desire to perhaps start a podcast of her own devoted to Sims 2. But there was two things she was worried about. Number one, she thought, I wonder if I could really, get this whole podcasting thing down. And number two, I wonder if people would really participate. I mean, it's kind of very narrow audience that I'd be reaching. Well, as you can imagine, Cliff got involved, and I strongly encouraged her to give it a try. And, well, she did. And in just a few short weeks, she has already recorded 7 live shows here on TalkShoe. And she has very nice-sized crowds of people who are joining her just to talk about Sims 2. In fact, what I want to do right now is play a little sample of her show for you.
TalkShoe. Recorded live. This is an interactive podcast designed for audience participation. Come talk, text chat, or listen live at TalkShoe.com.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sims 2 Challenges podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the Black Widow Challenge. We actually have the biggest group right now that we've ever had participating live. It's just me and my faithful friend, Gwen, on the phone, and then everybody else is in the chat as of right now. So we'll try to keep up with that. We're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, we're talking about the Black Widow Challenge, which is actually one that I haven't done, but I've read quite a few blogs about it. So here is what it is. I don't think most people are making a full neighborhood of Black Widows either.
Mm-mm.
They're just pretty much doing it.
I'm running out of neighborhoods. I keep starting new ones for certain things, and it's like my game's running slow. I can't make another one.
Yeah, no kidding. Next thing you know, you got 30 going, holy crap, where is this again? I don't
I did this challenge in November of 2005, and back then I wasn't blogging a lot. I used the Maxis story thing to upload it to the Exchange, and unfortunately it had so many pictures. It had 175 pictures that it was too big to upload. Yeah, so it never got uploaded, and eventually I moved all the pictures around in my story folder and lost the story. So.
Okay, so obviously you can see that Rachel's doing a great job, and she's having a lot of fun talking to people about Sims 2. I mean, that is the whole idea. You don't have to have something that you think is massively popular. All you need to do is have passion about anything, and I'm certain if you went to the right place and invited the right people to come talk with you about whatever it is you're passionate about, you'll find other people who share your passion, and you could be a podcaster. I mean, listen to this. Rachel went from being a podcast listener only to being a podcaster herself overnight. And there was absolutely no monetary cost at all for her to start her show. Why? Because TalkShoe is a completely free service. Not only that, but TalkShoe will actually pay you to create shows and to build your audience. Yes, you heard me right. If you are passionate about something and you would like to start your own podcast about that passion, and you don't know anything about RSS feeds or XML or file enclosures and blog posts and all those other things, you can not only start your podcast on TalkShoe without it costing you a dime with just a computer and a telephone line, but you could also start getting paid guaranteed from the very first show. I just know this from experience, and I know it from the people who I've referred over to TalkShoe up to this point. But that's enough about what TalkShoe is for the beginner. Perhaps you're already a podcaster. You might be asking yourself, why would I want to use a service like TalkShoe? I mean, I have all this nice equipment that I've purchased so that I would have this great studio sound. You know, I don't want to go to this TalkShoe service and have my show starting to sound like a telephone call. Well, if this is what you're thinking, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I've been podcasting for more than a year, and I have thousands of dollars worth of equipment right now in front of me. I mean, I'm certainly not willing to toss out all of my equipment to the side and start using my telephone to podcast in a conference call. However, I will tell you, I currently host all 6 of the podcasts that I produce for the Generally Speaking Podcast Network on TalkShoe. That's right, even this show right here, the Podcast Answer Man, this file is being hosted by TalkShoe. But you might be thinking to yourself, well, Cliff, you don't sound like you're recording this through a conference calling bridge. And Cliff, it doesn't sound like you're on the telephone. Well, you're absolutely right. That's because I'm recording this show exactly the same way that I would have recorded it if I never even heard of TalkShoe.com. I mean, I'm using a professional broadcast microphone. I'm using a professional 12-channel sound mixer. I have a special program that's queuing up all my audio clips so that I can do things like this. I mean, I have everything set up professionally here, and you're right. I am not willing to lose the quality of our shows. I have toyed around with some things here on TalkShoe just to get a feel for my different options, but I am basically recording this thing in full audio quality here in my own podcast studio. And then what I'm doing is I'm simply taking this recorded content and I'm uploading it and hosting this file on TalkShoe for insertion in my feed. In fact, the only thing I do differently now is instead of taking this show and uploading it to Libsyn and pointing my RSS feed over to Libsyn servers, I'm instead pointing this show or uploading this show to TalkShoe. I create a new episode on a TalkCast page that I created over there. I upload this episode to that TalkCast, and then I simply get the link and post the link to this MP3 file on TalkShoe server over to in my links in my RSS feed. And when you downloaded this, you actually got it from TalkShoe. Well, that's not the only difference. There are actually 2 more differences than posting my thing over at Libsyn. In fact, one of the differences is the fact that hosting my show at TalkShoe.com is free. Now, when I was using Libsyn.com, I got to the point where I had so much content. I mean, so many hours worth of podcasts that I'm actually uploading that I was up to the professional $50 per month hosting plan at Libsyn.com. You know, I've since dropped my Libsyn.com account to the $5 a month level just so that my previous 120 plus podcast episodes in my archive will continue to be served from their archive servers for as long as I still have them hosted over there. Right off the bat, TalkShoe.com has saved me $45 a month in podcast hosting. However, the reason TalkShoe.com is able to offer these services for free is because they will soon start inserting very short advertisements into the podcast hosting at the point of download. Now, this has always been in their marketing plan or their business plan, and basically I understood this when I went into it. But they said, you know, until we get this technology in place, we're still going to pay you just as if the ads were there. In fact, it's entirely possible that you may have actually heard a GoDaddy ad at the beginning of this show. If not, try downloading this episode of the Podcast Answer Man in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm sure that there will be an ad inserted at the front of this show. Now, there are many other alternatives out there for free MP3 hosting for your podcast out there. I mean, the fact is two of them pop off or come to mind right off the top of my head. First one is podshow.com. The other one is switchpod.com. Both of these hosting solutions are completely free to the podcaster, and both of them are able to do so because they insert advertisements into your show at the point of download. So you're asking yourself possibly, why in the world is Cliff paying $50 a month to host his files when he could have went to Podshow or SwitchPod for absolutely free? The reason? Well, quite simply, it's the fact that they would make a ton of money in ad revenue off the downloads of the content that I put so much of my hard work and effort in. And, well, neither of those two services offered to share a single penny of the profit of ad revenue with me. So instead of, I just didn't like the idea of me putting all that content together and them making all that money and I don't get a cut. And so I decided, I'd prefer $50 a month isn't a lot of money. I'll go ahead and pay for my own hosting. However, they are going to, here's the thing. I have gone over to TalkShoe because they are sharing the profits with me at almost a 50-50 level. Here's how it currently works out. In 1 hour of recorded content for one show, let's just say if this podcast were 1 hour, I don't think it's going to be 1 hour, but let's just assume that it's 1 hour. TalkShoe will actually make 8 cents in ad revenue once the ad technology is put into place, and I think it's going to happen within the next week to 2 weeks. Anyway, they'll make 8 cents off the ads that are inserted into my podcast. I will make 4 cents for that 1 hour of downloaded show. Now, the nice part is that if I arrange my own kind of sponsorship, let's say I get DirecTV, and they say, hey, we'll pay you 10 cents per download for 10,000 downloads of your show. I can actually take their pre-done ad, ask TalkShoe to set that up to automatically insert for 10,000 shows and track it for me. And what'll happen is I will get an overwhelming majority of that advertising dollar. In fact, I think it's something like I don't know if they keep a half a cent per download or something. It's something ridiculously low if I go out and get the advertising myself. But the nice thing is I don't have to get the advertising. TalkShoe does that for me. And what's awesome is I can actually focus on what I'm passionate about. Creating shows about Lost, about my crazy life, about the church, about net technology stuff. I mean, about podcasting. I focus on content that I'm passionate about, and I don't have to make all those phone calls to people and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about advertising on my podcast. That stuff is hard, and it's not something I really wanted to get involved in. But here, TalkShoe does it for me. And they are very generous in sharing the revenue. I could go on about the monetary benefits of hosting your podcast on TalkShoe.com. In fact, there's a lot more I could share about it. However, I'll just add one part to end this discussion of the monetary stuff. And the one question is, well, do they really pay their podcasters? I mean, you said the technology isn't even there yet. So the ads, if you've noticed, I've actually been hosting my shows on TalkShoe.com for the last 3 months now. And the thing is you've not heard a single ad inserted in any of my shows because they haven't got that embedded technology set up yet. Well, they're about ready to do it, but the thing is they made an agreement. So they said, hey, Cliff and other talkcasters, we'll tell you what, right now the business model is that we're going to insert ads. We don't have that technology yet, but we don't want to wait. We need to build our hosts, the number of hosts that we have here, and we need to build content. We need you to bring content, good content here, interesting content that audiences will flock to. And, once we have the content, then we actually can get advertisers, So they said, you bring your content here and we'll pay you even though we don't have any advertisers yet. And, well, let's just put it this way. In November of 2006, I had more than 27,000 hours worth of podcasts downloaded from TalkShoe alone. That's when I didn't even have all my shows hosted over there yet. I mean, just 1 or 2 of my shows out of the 6 that I produced was hosted over there. By the end of the first week of December, I had received my first check from TalkShoe. Now, if you were a super sleuth, you could probably go and find a podcasting magazine out there that did an article on TalkShoe, and they kind of posted how much I made in November of 2006. I'm not going to quite share that with you here, but let's just say that the Generally Speaking Podcast Network holds the record for the most amount of ad revenue sharing commission ever paid out by TalkShoe, and I think I'm going to blow that record this month for sure. So anyway, let's see here. Anyway, let me go ahead and I'm actually reading from the script. This is not like me, really. But I'm going to go ahead and I kind of jumped off my script for just a minute. But anyway, it says, if you've been subscribed to our Weekly Lost podcast and the My Crazy Life podcast, you know that I've been releasing episodes back to back. And even though the technology has not been there, so that not even a single ad has been inserted in any of my shows in the past 3 months, they didn't do so much as to hesitate to pay me the agreed commissions for the content that I've brought to TalkShoe. Now, basically, the whole reason I wrote that script there is to share with you the fact that they've paid me and they've not made any money from advertising yet. That's integrity. And it's the integrity of a company like that that made my decision to move all of my content to TalkShoe.com easy. And so I have chosen to do so, and I don't regret it one bit. And, I don't have any lengthy contract that I had to sign. There's just a user agreement, and the user agreement is so flexible that even if I wanted to bring in my own advertiser and manually speak the ad for JK Audio broadcast host, I could put this in here and I could bill them myself and keep 100% of that profit and still use my hosting here and still get paid from the ads that are put in the front of the show. I'm not being paid by JK Audio, but I'm getting ready to play for you some stuff, do some stuff here where you will actually hear a lot about the JK Audio broadcast host. Okay, so not only do I save money in file hosting, and not only do I make a pretty decent amount of money from all the hours of my life that I put into podcasts, I also benefit from the live interactive feature of TalkShoe as well. I actually launched the show Net Junk on TalkShoe. This is a live interactive show that is recorded every Tuesday night at 9:15 p.m. I have a co-host that is a good friend of mine, Robert Johnson. He lives in Florida. I live here in Kentucky. And this is a technology. It's a technology-based internet talk show. I mean, it's basically a radio talk show live, just like you would hear on AM radio. Now, when I started out, my co-host and I basically simply used the telephone, and we were going to just call it in. And, I said, I've got all this equipment, but how am I going to make all this work? Well, to be honest with you, I went ahead and just gave it a shot. I said, hey, let's see how Net Junk would sound if we both just called in by telephone. And, well, to give you an idea, this is what it sounded like.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first inaugural episode of Net Junk. My name's Cliff Ravenscraft with the Generally Speaking Podcast Network, and very excited about this new podcast. As many of you know, I am a bit of a tech geek, self-confessed, and I just love new technology, and I can't get enough of it. And it would be only fitting to try to do something so cutting edge as to start out a show with a brand new service like TalkShoe. And I want to introduce you guys to my co-host of this very awesome special podcast of the GSPN. And his name is Robert Johnson. And before he says hello to everyone, I do want to just give you an introduction to who he is. Robert and I met each other, I guess, almost 10 years ago, if that's not a gross exaggeration by 2 or 3 years. But anyway, he has become like one of my best friends in the entire world. We used to go to church together. Not only that, but we were called to ministry together, and we both became local preachers of a Nazarene church, and it just some fun times together. About 8 or so years ago, he decided to up and leave God's land here in northern Kentucky and move down to the swamplands of Florida, which I have no idea why he would do that. But anyway, I remember the night he left, I was like bawling my eyes out. I couldn't believe it. I thought, we're just never going to talk again. Well, I'm here to tell you that Robert and I have been prayer partners for every single year he's been gone, and once a week, with give or take a month here or there that we kind of fall off the wagon, he and I have had a prayer partnership that's been going strong. And over the years, a lot of our prayer partner time on the telephone together is spent talking about technology. Go and imagine that. And I figured, some of the conversations that Rob and I have had over the past, they would be excellent fodder for podcast material. And so I am here to invite and to introduce Robert Johnson to you all. Robert, can you say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm glad to have him here because I've been podcasting for almost a year, Robert, and I've been begging you, pleading with you to come and podcast with us. What's taking you so long?
Well, I have nothing better to do on a Tuesday night.
Okay, so you have an idea of the audio quality of the first show. Now, the thing is to be honest with you, it was still, something that we were playing around with, and I was actually dialed in via Skype. I was actually trying to cheat, and I dialed in via Skype, and he was dialed in via Skype, and so it didn't work out as clear as we had hoped, but that was our first show. However, since then, I've like I said, I've made a commitment to really start hosting everything over here at TalkShoe, and well, I decided, I'm going to start doing some more live shows on a regular basis. And I knew that I didn't want to sound like that the entire time. I knew that I wanted to be able to record locally. So I have since purchased a $500 piece of equipment by JK Audio. Now, this piece of equipment is called the Broadcast Host. The Broadcast Host is a telephone interface device. It's a small box, not too small. It's about the size of a little cable box, if you will. And anyway, it's got an XLR input and XLR output for those of you who are got your own little home studios. And the caller basically is coming in through an output, and I take an XLR cable from the output from the caller, and I put that into one of the lines in my mixer, and basically I just pick up the phone, and it sounds like this. And see how that was. Now that's actually coming straight in through my mixer and recorded here locally on my digital recorder. So that's pretty sweet. Now the other thing is that I basically take everything that is sent to my digital recorder is also sent out my auxiliary, except for, of course, the audio line that's coming in from the podcast host because we wouldn't want feedback. So I basically send my microphone and all of these different, audio clips that I'll play in the background like this. I mean, it all gets sent out back to the broadcast host. In fact, I'm going to give you an example by calling the Tell Me service. I don't know if you've ever used Tell Me, but I'm going to dial it here. 1-800-555-TELL. And I'm going to bring that up here. Alrighty.
Tell me. Hey there. Welcome to Tell Me. Main menu. Here are all the categories you can choose from.
News Center.
Okay, News Center.
News Center. Say a News Center
Technology.
Category. Technology.
Welcome to the Tech Vine through Sunday, January 21st. Hollywood talent firm United Talent Agency plans to create a channel on internet video service Veo Networks to seek new artists and spotlight its own clients.
Say another News Center category.
Top
For example,
stories.
Top stories. Say stop to interrupt this report.
Here's your national news update through Sunday, January 21st. Another cold weather system is moving out of the southwest, bringing heavy snows from...
Say another News Center category.
Weather.
For example, weather. Say a city and state. Enter a zip
Hebron,
code.
Kentucky.
East Bernstein, Kentucky.
No.
Say stop to interrupt this forecast.
Stop.
At 12:54, say a city and state or enter a zip code.
Let me enter a zip code. Hold on 1 second.
Sorry, I didn't. Kentucky. At 12:54 a.m., it's cloudy and it's 30 degrees with a gentle breeze. Sunday, snow, a high of 40 and a low of 28. Monday, occasional clouds, a high of 40
Stop.
and a low of 24. Say a city
Main
and state
menu.
or enter 88200.
Goodbye.
I don't recognize.
Sorry, I failed to parse the weather data.
Say a city.
Okay, so anyway, you get an idea there of what our broadcast host does. So I'm going to drop that call, and that's done. Now, that gives you an idea of what the broadcast host does, and I am so excited about this piece of equipment. So as you can see, I send all of my audio out, and I was actually not speaking into a telephone. I was actually speaking into my studio mic, and even the voice recognition, for the most part, understood me perfectly well and was able to send me to top stories and technology and the news center and weather and Hebron, Kentucky is a little hard for it to understand, so you can probably understand. But let's just put it this way. When our listeners dial in live and listen to our live shows, they hear me and my audio that I play as far as the clips perfectly well. So basically, let's see here. I'm trying to find out where I am I hate doing scripts, Sometimes I just like to just talk. Notice I use Okay, so that is how the broadcast host works. Now here is what it has done for the production value of my live shows recorded on TalkShoe. Notice that I, as the host, have the full full studio audio quality that comes normally as recording a show here locally. However, my co-host Robert here in this TalkShoe or in this NetJunk TalkShoe show, he's my co-host, and all the callers, they're going to be the only people who actually sound like they're on the telephone. So this is much more like a talk show or a radio talk show. And let me go ahead and play for you what our most recent episode, one of our recent episodes of TalkShoe sounds like. So let me play that. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to NetJunk. Boy, do we have a special episode of NetJunk tonight. It is Tuesday evening, January 9th, 2007, and the world has officially been changed today. I'm Cliff Ravenscraft, your host, and my co-host is Robert Johnson from Florida. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I've never been before. Okay, so you hear how my audio quality is still the same as it is here, and Rob's the only one that sounds like he's on the telephone. Well, I always wanted to find out, I wonder if this broadcast host would be good enough for Stephanie and I to record our regular show just as we normally would here in the studio, and what it would be like for people to just dial in live and just listen to us as we record our normal show, but yet have the ability to use the request to talk feature to kind of break in and share. And so we had already made the decision. Well, we already know that the broadcast host works, and we're going to do it. So starting Friday night at 9:15 p.m. on February 9th, we are going to start going to a weekly live Weekly Lost podcast as well. So I'll be doing two shows at 9:15, one on Tuesday nights, one on Friday nights, every single week during the rest of Lost. And Stephanie and I gave it a shot to kind of see how it worked. And we were so overwhelmingly surprised by something that we didn't even realize would be awesome. And the fact is Stephanie and I, sometimes we get our facts a little bit bent out of shape. And I had shared something and Stephanie disagreed and said, no, I think you're wrong. We talked about it back and forth for a little bit. And what would happen if Stephanie and I were just basically having our local recording, it would have gone on unresolved, and we would have agreed to just disagree at this point, and we'll find out later, and we would have went on to something else. And then I would get a flood of emails, 50, 60, maybe even 200 emails from our listeners saying that, hey, Stephanie was right. Well, because we had the broadcast host hooked up, and because we had everybody dialed in live via TalkShoe, this is what actually took place, and this is awesome.
The audio that I'm...
Oh, hold on. Let me find out which one I'm still playing that one. Okay, here is what took place in that live show that we tested out for the Weekly Lost podcast.
Probably died out in the ocean.
Okay.
Because they've been all night
exactly.
and not known where he was.
Mm-hmm. And we get our first glimpse here of who we thought at the time were the others. And Jin even comes out of the jungle and using some of his very first English words, he says, "Others." Hey, I did that pretty good, didn't I?
You did.
Others. Anyway, they are basically, and then of course we seen them thrown into a pit by Mr. Echo and some of the other tailies. Among those were Anna Lulu and Libby. And I'm not sure, but I think Goodwin was in that one screen capture that I kind of took a look at. I went back and looked at a screen capture later. So anyway,
Goodwin would have been dead already.
Goodwin would have been dead already? I don't think so.
Wouldn't he have?
No.
Because she dug that hole.
No. Well, Goodwin didn't die in the hole.
She dug the
That was
hole for
Nathan.
the guy that... Exactly. And she killed Goodwin right after that.
Maybe. Do you... Okay, so...
Do you want to be factual or not? I'm just giving you a different...
Sometimes it's okay to
point
just
of
make
view.
up facts as you go along.
That's why you didn't give me the script. It's because you just want to make... I thought you wanted a quality show, not a Cliff made up the whole story show.
Well, how about rather than calling it the Cliff made up his own reality show, how about this is the way that Cliff perceived it show? Okay, so maybe I'm wrong, all right? But regardless, we see some folks thrown into a pit. Goodwin may or may not have been there. Depends on if he was dead yet.
Probably was dead.
Stephanie thinks he was dead. Oh, hold on. We have a request to chat from Tony from Columbus, Ohio. Tony, you're on live.
Don't talk unless you agree with me.
Oh, wait. Hold on, Tony. Hold on.
Let's turn you up.
Let me unmute you. Tony, go ahead. You're on live.
Can you hear me? It's showing that I'm not unmuted yet.
You are certainly unmuted.
Okay, I got a slow PC here. I agree with Stephanie, mainly because, well, actually I agree with you both, because even though they showed it later in when they did the flashback for the 48 days, the other 48 days, he was actually dead at that point.
Edwin, you think Goodwin is actually dead at that point?
Correct.
Okay. Then how can you agree with both of us then?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Because they didn't show that. They didn't show that till a later episode when they did the flashback for the other 48 days.
Yeah, but we watched Orientation the second time around already knowing about the other 48 days.
So Stephanie's right. I'm wrong.
I love that word. Can you say that again?
Would you like me to get a recording and make that like an audio clip that you can play all the time?
That would so totally rock.
All right, Tony, thank you very much for chiming in. This is what I love about a live show. Now, here we were having an argument. Cliff knows just enough about... Yes, we were having a disagreement about factual information regarding Lost.
And I don't know why. I do not know why.
I doubted you.
Argue with me in facts.
I have no idea.
You would think you would learn by now.
I would think that I would know by now.
Like Nick.
Okay. So anyway, enough of Stephanie and I's bantering and bickering. But you get the idea. See, I mean, this is yet another benefit of TalkShoe. I mean, and you don't have to have the $500 piece of equipment. You could have two computers set up, and you could actually do the same thing by having one of the computers Skype out and send your audio mixer through the microphone. I mean, people do these things all kinds of different ways. I chose the path of least resistance as far as feedback and echoes and all those other things, and I've actually decided I'm not podcasting for a hobby anymore. And for me, I'm doing this as part-time employment now, and partly because it's possible for me to do that in part by the folks over at TalkShoe.com and the fact that they're getting ads inserted into shows and they're sharing revenue with me, but also because I have such a great listener base that helps offset some of the operating expenses and everything associated with our shows by sending us donations via PayPal, and we have actually some folks that are signing up as monthly supporters. So obviously I went the $500 route, but the point here is that I think you already understand I'm quite passionate about the technology and the business model of TalkShoe.com. And, I'm very excited to announce to you that the very next episode of this podcast, the Podcast Answer Man Show, will be an interview with none other than the founder and CEO of TalkShoe, Dave Nelson. He's agreed to come on to this show and answer some questions in an interview-style show. And I would actually like it if you're interested in anything I've said, you want to ask some questions about the technology, about the future of TalkShoe, about whether or not what their business model is, whether or not you can, what can you use Vonage? I mean, what other kind of questions you have? Any questions regarding TalkShoe and their service and things that might help you make a decision whether or not you want to start your own show or move your shows over to TalkShoe, I encourage you to send them all to me in audio form. However, you can either send me an MP3 or actually an MP3 file, or you can just call us on our listener line at area code 859-795-4057. Again, the preferred method of sending in any kind of questions or comments regarding TalkShoe so that they can get played into the audio, or I'm sorry, into the next interview session that I have with Dave Nelson over there at TalkShoe. The preferred method is either email me an MP3 file with your question or comment, or call it in at area code 859-795-4057. I'd also like you to do this. If you are interested in starting your own show over at TalkShoe, and I've already proved to you that if you are passionate about anything, even a game for the PC called Sims 2, you can have a very successful show on TalkShoe. I guarantee it. All it takes is passion. And if you're passionate about something and you find other people who are also passionate about that subject, people will listen. And if you're interested in getting paid to talk about things you're passionate about, which, I mean, hello, could you ever dream of anything more? Then all you have to do is this, okay? Go over and get signed up with a username and a PIN number at TalkShoe.com. And then what you need to do is send an email to cash@TalkShoe.com. In the body of that message, in the subject line, put in there, please set me up to make money by hosting at TalkShoe. And in the body of that message, say, this is where the favor comes in, please do me a favor and say, I have been referred by Cliff Ravenscraft, username GSPN. That's Generally Speaking Podcast Network. So basically, you're going to send a message to cash@TalkShoe.com. In the subject line, you're going to say, please sign me up to make cash or money hosting with TalkShoe. Oh, in the body of the message, you also want to put in, of course, your name and your user ID and say, I was referred by Cliff Ravenscraft, user ID GSPN. And all you have to do is send that email to cash@TalkShoe.com. They will send you back a confirmation that says, thanks, you're all set up. And then you will get paid immediately for starting shows. In fact, I think for the first 10 shows, they'll automatically pay you $5 per show for the first 10 shows, just right off the bat, just to get you started. And of course, you'll make that, if you have an hour-long show, you'll make 4 cents for each time it's downloaded. And of course, there's more. There's a whole pay scale on how things are working, and they're actually working it to where people who make shorter shows actually make a little bit more money. So it all works out. I'm telling you, this company is on top of things, and I'll tell you, just check it out. And if you have questions, just send them to me in an MP3 file or calling them in to 859-795-4057. Well, anyway, as always, I need to thank you for subscribing to our podcast here at the Generally Speaking Podcast Network. You can find all of our shows at generallyspeakingpodcast.com. And on our page, it's never been easier to follow the menu on the right-hand side. I mean, you can find the show notes for all of our shows. You can find out how to participate in the live shows that we record on Tuesday nights every Tuesday, and then starting February 9th every Friday night. You can find out how to contact us by phone, by email, or even by the United States Postal Service. By the way, if you want to send your emailed MP3 file, I guess I should tell you my email address is cliff@ravenscraft.org. cliff@ravenscraft.org. Anyway, I want to send out a special thank you to all the folks at TalkShoe.com for such an awesome service with tech support that simply is second to none. I just tell you, they've been such a blessing, and I strongly encourage any podcaster listening to this or any future podcaster listening to this, please investigate. Do yourself a favor and at least investigate TalkShoe.com. And if you have questions, again, send them to me in MP3 form or call them into our listener line. So until next time, may God richly bless you, and I'll keep podcasting. Talk to you later, and God bless.